This is part 1 of a 3-part video. Part 2 will come out tomorrow, and part 3 will come out in 2 days. Please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell if you want to see more videos from my channel. Well, here we are. I've been wanting to make a video like this for a while, but never really found the time to because of a bunch of other life events that were happening. But now that I've officially graduated from high school, I figured this was a good enough time to look through all the films I've watched in my life that became my personal favorites. Each of these films hold a special place in my heart and have shaped me into the person I am today in some way, shape, or form. Some more than others, but these movies mean a lot to me. And I want to have a chance to talk about why they mean a lot, as well as geek out about why these are so good. So let's not waste any time. I present to you my top 30 favorite animated films of all time, starting with...
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go.
Move aside, Claus. This is the best animated Christmas movie of all time. Arthur Christmas is a charming and impossibly cute movie about Arthur, who, upon discovering that a child has been missed on a Christmas run, sets out to deliver the present before dawn along with his grandfather and a tag-along elf. Up front, a large part of why this movie is loved by many is for its comedy. Sure, it has a boatload of hilarious physical comedy, and all the Santa operation gags are a lot of fun, but mostly this movie gets an edge because of its verbal comedy with a ton of very memorable and very funny lines. From the "I lost everything in that flood" to the "that's the girl that Santa hates," and my personal favorite, what were their names? I can never remember. Bambi, John. And all around, Grand Santa is just a fantastic character, one of my favorites from the movie, second only to the legendary Bryony. And while this movie does touch on generational struggles, it never once demonizes the new in favor of the old. Grand Santa is shown to have faults in the film and grows to appreciate the new ways. Steve is never once portrayed as a greedy corporate leader, but he is shown to be a capable person with issues of his own, including feeling like his work isn't loved and appreciated by his father. And at the heart of the film, Arthur is the one who reminds everyone why it's important to keep the spirit of Christmas alive. It doesn't matter how the present gets to the child, as long as she gets it, Santa came and Santa cares. Plus, as I just said, the Santa operation scenes are so much fun and incredibly detailed. I could watch this movie forever.
On the wings of a small, simple melody.
Beauty and the Beast has become a hallmark of the Disney brand ever since it first came out. Part of that has to do with its Oscar nomination, but really it's just because it's a timeless classic. On paper, a story about a girl who falls in love while being held captive at a hideous beast's castle should not work. Except that's not what the movie is about. In fact, the falling in love part comes in the last 5 minutes. It's about how Belle's ability to see kindness inspires the beast to change, further developing the bond between the two on a more personal level, with them gradually becoming really close friends who accept each other's influence. I do kind of wish they leaned a bit more into that though, since a lot of the depiction is very romantic, and Belle doesn't have as much development and characterization as some of Disney's other protagonists. Yes, that forms the basis of why I love Belle more than Beauty, just because Suzu is easily a more compelling character than Belle. But even discarding all of that, this is a great romance story, on top of having amazing songs, spectacular animation, and a goofy yet genuinely disturbing villainous force in the presence of Gaston. It's not my favorite Disney movie, but it is in my top 3, and its influence over the animation industry reigns to this day. I really do just love it to pieces. You're either surprised or not surprised at all that I like Words Like Soda more than Beauty and the Beast. Either way, Words Bubble Up Like Soda Pop was one of the sweetest, most emotional, and most criminally underrated films that just so happened to get completely ignored in the year of Bruno not being talked about. Cherry is a shy but earnest boy working at an elderly care center who has a strong passion for haiku but doesn't fare well in speaking his poetry out loud. He meets a bubbly girl named Smile, a humble online influencer who wears a mask to hide her buck teeth, and the two hit it off really well. And while Cherry has to move by the end of the summer, the two become determined to find an old record that a friend of Cherry's is unable to find. A big part of this movie's appeal at the time was its cutesy, colorful, saturated art style, depicting a sort of whimsical wonder in its summertime setting. Also, the soundtrack was composed by the same composer as Silent Voice and Listen the Bluebird. But I have said before that even though this follows the formula of silent guy inspired by quirky girl, there are a lot of things that this movie does that makes it very refreshing. For one, Cherry isn't a depressed loner. He has friends and connections, and he gets along with his family very well. His passion for haiku is sympathetic, and many have agreed that he provides excellent autism representation, myself included. Smile may embody parts of the typical dream girl trope, where a lot of the time these characters are too overbearing and intrusive and can sometimes really get annoying. But here, she's just a nice person. She's very grounded and easygoing, especially towards Cherry, which is very refreshing to see in an anime film. And her arc in this film is very compelling. Because of her insecurities with her buck teeth, it makes it all the more sad that the advice she gives Cherry, she doesn't give to herself. And Cherry's proclamation of love isn't entirely out of romantic intentions, it's because she needs to hear how valued she is. Oh my gosh, a manic pixie dream girl with an actual character arc and emotional depth. Who would have thought? I know that the slow pacing has been a problem for some, and for some who haven't seen nearly as many romance works as I have, this can seem overblown, which it kind of is. But honestly, I don't even care. This movie is super cute, so much fun, and tugs at my heartstrings every time.
A young man walked through the forest with a flowering coat of green. His love had hair like fire, her eyes an emerald sheen.
Cartoon Saloon's first film still holds up well after all these years. An impeccably gorgeous movie, animated in a sort of stained glass art style, with an amazing soundtrack and a story deeply rooted in Celtic mythology, in this case covering the origin of the Book of Kells, one of the most famous treasures of Ireland, though people who actually know the history of the book will have to tell me how much of this is accurate or partly exaggerated for narrative effect. The story isn't all that complex, it mostly is just Brendan doing as Aidan tells him to do and him getting into situations with his uncle and creatures of Celtic myth, and the impending doom of Viking attacks looms over the narrative as well. But what does make this film so ethereal, aside from the animation and soundtrack, is the character work. The characters have such incredible personalities and work very well off each other. And sometimes I think we're unfortunately underutilized. I really wanted more of Aisling, but oh well. Overall, this is a masterpiece of beautifully stylized animation and lovable character dynamics. I keep forgetting that Weathering With You came out in 2019, since the year had so many lackluster entries in the animated film market. Weathering With You follows Horaka, a runaway high schooler who comes to Tokyo to escape a vague family situation. He comes across many lovable side characters who take him in and give him a chance at a happy life, but everything changes when he encounters Hina, another delinquent high schooler. Except that she can somehow bend the weather to her will. They decide to make money off it, because of course they do. There are a lot of rain shots in this movie, and I love every single one of them, and that's a contributing factor to why this movie is so good. Aesthetically, this has some of the most beautiful animation in anything. It's the perfect movie to watch on a rainy day. But then there are other factors of the movie that I think are great. Shinkai's style of comedy works very well here, though admittedly it's not as effective as Your Name. But one thing that I think is handled better here than in Your Name is the romance. Also, just the side characters in general, they're all a lot of fun and are full of personality. The romance between Horaka and Hina is compelling as it is wholesome, mostly because they actually spend time together, but also because of them bonding over common ground. Them struggling in financial situations, aspiring to be entrepreneurs, both are opportunists and play off each other's sense of humor very well, and on top of that, you really believe that they have fun spending time together. The story, though, is definitely weaker than Your Name, mainly because it's not as ambitious, some minor aspects are a little uncomfortable to think about, and the ending is kind of questionable, but once you watch Ponyo, the ending is a masterpiece in comparison to that. I absolutely love this movie, and even with its faults, it says a lot about the value of the relationships we have, and I will defend this movie if I have to.
Listen to your heart when he's calling for you.
It seems like over the past couple of years, Whisper of the Heart has been getting more and more recognition as one of the best Ghibli movies, and I am very happy with that because it's one of my favorites too. And it actually was my favorite at a certain point in time. A story about a middle school girl named Shizuku who's writing parody lyrics as a personal passion of hers and wants to become an artist when she gets older, but she's constantly shrouded with thoughts of self-deprecation, and it doesn't help that her family doesn't take her writing passion seriously. It's only when she meets Seiji, a passionate violin player, and his grandfather, who encourage her to let her dreams of writing run wild. I love almost everything about this movie. The romance is very genuine, and you want to see these two together all the time, even though you know their dreams will take them in separate directions. I love the dreamlike sequences born out of Shizuku's story about the Baron. I unironically love country roads now. The animation is unsurprisingly beautiful. It is Ghibli after all. I guess my only real gripe with this movie is in the first half. Not that it's anything boring or frustrating, far from it in fact. I love movies that take their time with their characters. Slice of life is my favorite genre in anything. But there's this whole thing with Shizuku's friend having a crush on this guy, but then this guy has a crush on Shizuku, and it's just, I always think, why is this here? Like, it's charming and it's depressing considering what this does to Shizuku's self-esteem and her perspective on if she even deserves love, but I always wonder why it's presented so straightforward. Yeah, it's a much stronger movie when it's focused more on the artistry and romance rather than the middle school crush culture. But otherwise, I love this movie so much. It reminds me to keep going as an artist, and that no matter how many mistakes I make or what I think of myself, I still have potential in me and I will realize that potential. That's some good, impactful stuff, and I recommend this to any aspiring artist because it will change you. But even then, it's not my favorite Ghibli film, but we'll get to that later. Arguably Cartoon Saloon's darkest movie. Based on a 2001 novel of the same name, The Breadwinner is about a girl named Parwana who is struggling to provide for her family after her father was arrested in a Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. The movie delves deep into the cruel treatment of women and the effed up social norms, but it displays a pretty poignant theme of how to cope with these oppressive hardships in life. We hear of Parwana's whimsical stories brought to life by beautiful collage-esque animation, but these do more than just distract. These stories also serve as a way for her and her family to process and cope with the trauma of losing a beloved family member in their life. It's a deeply disturbing story from beginning to end, but it doesn't hesitate in showing sparks of imagination and hope. The animation outside of the storytelling sequences doesn't get as creative as the likes of Secret of Kells or Wolfwalkers, but it is very graphic and real in its depiction of the time and place it's set in, and in a way that, even though the PG-13 rating might be pushing it a little, it still deserves the rating a bit. I absolutely love Parwana as a kid character. Her courage and determination to help her family is inspiring, and you really feel her struggles and the weight on her shoulders. Overall, Breadwinner is one of the best animated films to have come out in 2017. Go check it out. It's one of my favorite movies ever, and my second favorite movie to come out of Cartoon Saloon, definitely. Despite it being my favorite of Makoto Shinkai's filmography, I have a strange relationship with Your Name. I remember back in the day when this is getting bogged down in the Your Name versus Silent Voice conundrum, so I decided to watch it to see its quality for myself, since at the time, A Silent Voice was my favorite movie ever. And even though I still liked that better, I recall giving this a 10 out of 10 the first time I saw it. I really loved it. But over time, as my general distaste for lazily written romantic subplots grew, the appeal of Your Name started to wear off on me. Temporarily, it left my personal favorites, and at one point I considered Weathering with You to be better. I mean, in terms of relationships, but really? But after all these years, I think I finally made up my mind in saying that this definitely deserves to be called one of my personal favorites. Most people's attachment to Your Name hinges on its unique story, being so grand and epic in scale in comparison to other anime films, at least at the time, where a lot of the movies that came out were pretty small-scaled or had somewhat generic fantasy concepts. Your Name lured audiences in with a comedic yet heartwarming body swap story that gradually spiraled into one of the greatest and most thrilling disaster movies ever, complete with asteroids and time traveling. Now, you might think that I prefer the second half with my rough history of body swap stories, but you'd be wrong. I absolutely love the first half, and part of that does have to do with how refreshing it is. No secondhand embarrassment here, but it also has to do with the other reason why I love this movie so much. It's just so darn funny. Shinkai has this remarkable low-key style of comedy that's present in all of the movies I've seen of his, and there were so many moments that put a dumb smile on my face. On top of that, I think the characters of Taki and Mitsuha are awesome, and their friends are super funny, again reiterating how comedically wonderful this film is. But the one negative that I have always attached to this film is the fact that I never bought into Taki and Mitsuha being in love with each other. I get the idea that through the body swap, they become so immersed in each other's lives that they can't possibly imagine where they would go in life or who they would be without them. But then, why couldn't they just leave it at that? I guarantee it would be much more powerful if they just remained friends. There really was no need to add that romantic tinge on top. Also, the whole forgetting name thing is kind of bogus, but the animation is stunning, the soundtrack is beyond lovely, the story is gripping and interesting, the characters are great, and it is super funny. Honestly, I'd go as far as to say it deserves the praise it's received over the years. Mulan is impossible to not like. I forgot how much I loved this movie. As a kid, I loved the action, Eddie Murphy's performance as Mushu was fantastic, the comedy in general was great, the songs were bangers, and the whole package was a lot of fun, but as an adult now, there are things that I have grown to appreciate so much more, and it's earned its spot as my second favorite Walt Disney animated film of all time. Sure, Mulan isn't in the movie a whole lot, and it's a bit difficult to pinpoint what her arc is about for a portion of the film, but the emotional low point of the movie spelled it out clearly, and that got me kind of emotional. I empathize with Mulan. She wants to prove she's something other than weak and unable to help, and she wants to fight for honor, but because of the system she's trapped in and has to deal with, it makes her question her intentions, and she begins to question if she's really doing these heroic acts for self-service or for the good of others. It's a powerful display of how unfair societal norms can chide at marginalized people's self-worth and perspectives on life. And this is perfectly communicated through her I Want song, Reflections, which might actually be my favorite Walt Disney musical number. I think If Only might be my favorite to come out of the Disney brand, but out of the animated films, Reflections takes the cake. It is genuinely perfect, and it leaves me in awe every time I listen to it. On top of that, the rest of the songs are better than I remember as a kid, and the whiplash when we go from a girl worth fighting for to the ruins of the village is ultra shocking. The villains pose a pretty decent threat, but they could have been handled a bit better, and I don't remember the animation being this gorgeous. There are so many shots that could be considered the best animated bits in Disney history, and they are so beautiful that it honestly hurts to look at. Yeah, Mulan is just a timeless classic, and if you don't like it, I hope this perspective on the film is enough to convince you to give it another chance.
What's new, pussycat? Whoa, whoa, whoa! What's new, pussycat? Whoa, whoa, whoa!
With this movie's reputation, you might be thinking this is second or third place in my Ghibli ranking, and that my actual favorite will be later down the line. Nope. This is my favorite Ghibli film, The Cat Returns. Look, sometimes you want to watch a movie about a deep and compelling subject matter that leaves you a changed person, and sometimes you want to watch a movie about a girl who falls in love with a cat, because let's face it, we'd all fall in love with that cat, because in the dub, he's played by the guy from Princess Bride, so there's that. Cat Returns is such a good movie. It's cute, it's heartwarming, it's charming, and it is hella funny. That's a big reason why this movie works for me. I just think this is one of the strongest comedies I have ever watched. There are comedies that become memes and are as quotable as all heck. Like nowadays, you still hear people quoting Megamind and that one line from Phantom Menace, but sometimes quotable moments can ruin a movie since you hear it as a meme so many times that when you actually hear it in context, it's jarring. However, I think it is wholly unfortunate that The Cat Returns does not get the same treatment, because there are so many funny quotes in this that make it deserving of being quotable. Like, come to think of it, this is Clue levels of witty line delivery, at least in the English dub. There are so many standout jokes in this, from anything Tim Curry sends, that one, it's not cheating, it's cheating! The argument between Muta and Toto, at least I'm not a bird brain. Oh, but this one is my favorite. Okay, so the Baron says to Muta, I think there's some cake in the cupboard. And like split-second frame, Muta's expression immediately shifts as he says, where in the cupboard? And that delivery is just fantastic. This is my favorite bit in the whole film. Where was I? Oh yeah, so this movie is absolutely hilarious, but there are elements outside of comedy that I really love. I love the character interactions and the dialogue. Haru and the Baron have amazing chemistry, the climax of the movie is insane, and the animation is super pretty. I guess it could have worked a little better if it actually had any kind of second act, but I feel like that would have undercut the quick and snappy comedic tone of the movie, so it's alright. There aren't a whole lot of intellectual reasons as to why I love this film so much, it's just super cute and super funny. I recommend this to everyone.